Alors voilà, je vous présente sans plus tarder le premier des conférenciers de la matinée. Nous devions à ce moment-ci, pour entendre parler des villes intelligentes à l'ère des sociétés géospatialisées, première conférence de la première session, M. Carlo Ratti du Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Il a dû malheureusement annuler sa présence ici, mais il est remplacé par un collègue qui a accepté à quelques jours d'avis de le remplacer et que je vous présente avec plaisir, M. AnthonyVanky, qui est chercheur et stratège en partenariat au Sensible City Lab du MIT. C'est un groupe multidisciplinaire qui étudie l'interface entre les villes, les personnes et les technologies. Alors, M. Vanky, je vous invite à vous approcher. Et on vous remercie, bien sûr, d'avoir accepté de remplacer votre collègue, M. Ratti. Alors, je vous en prie, c'est à vous. It's up to you now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. First, I'd like to say that Carlo Ratti sends his best. Unfortunately, he got stuck on the other side of the planet. And so I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And the second apology is that my French is terrible. So I could try to do this in Spanish, but I don't think it would help anyone. So we'll stick with English for now. But it's really exciting to be part of a lab at MIT, which I'll show you some of the work, because I think we bring together a lot of disciplines. And of course, this conference is about, the spatial data that is telling the stories of our lives. So a lot of this you're familiar with. And a lot of you are familiar with the term smart city. IBM did a good job at trademarking it and sticking it on posters. But for us as a lab, we think there's something more powerful beyond the idea of just smart. Because smart is just about getting more people on a train or knowing where the train is. Maybe it's more sensible, that there's a human aspect. But then with our lab, a funnier spelling of sensible with an EA, which you've seen in your program. And you'll see in a moment, I guess, with the slide, once this gentleman helps. But that when you think about what a sensible city can be, it's not just about the technology, it's about the people. How do you bring people into the picture? How do people actually understand and equally explore the city with them? How do they have a different and visceral response in the city? Just making sure. He might come out again in a second. But that, I think to do that, you need to bring in many different disciplines. Probably in this audience, we have a wide variety. If you look at the people in our lab, we're about a third who come from architecture and planning, people who know space. Another third come from, maybe the more computational side, computer science, mathematics, applied physics. And then the last third are the humane folks. Oh, that's a good sign. Who bring together the humane sciences. We have someone whose background is in law, in the social sciences, in the visual arts. And I think together you'll see why I think our work is compelling. And in addition to that, the other side of the picture, the non-MIT side, are our partners and colleagues around the world who, I think for those people in government, one of the strongest things you can do is to make your city into a living laboratory, as a place where we can explore together these interesting challenges of space, technology, and data. And I start with this. What you're seeing is every message, every SMS message, email, phone call sent around the world over the span of 1 week. Quite literally, this is every hello, goodbye, I love you, congratulations on the business deal. We should actually see other people. Hey, why don't we do lunch next week? We call this a signature of humanity. And this data pulled together from the Ericsson Global Network tells an interesting story about how we talk. And this data is powerful because we all know of the term big data. This number comes from Google, 5 exabytes of data. This is the amount of information that we produce since the dawn of humanity to the year 2003. It's every Gutenberg Bible, every stupid Word document, every New York Times. But it's also now the same amount of data that we produce every 36 hours. So when you look at it, when you understand it, when you use it to understand people and place, you can not only tell a new story about citizens in the world, but that potentially, with a little imagination and creativity, you can create new products, new services, new ideas that help people explore that sensible city. So I'll share with you a few of our projects, and with the first one, I'll take you to the other side of the world, to Singapore, where we talk about this smart city, but it's usually very discreet. We look at mobility data. Here you can pull up on an app when the next bus is coming. But what if you could actually open up the entirety, all the data in the city, not only just the public data of weather or environmental quality, but also private data? Can you actually create an ecosystem where private industry wants to partner and bring this data together? Of course, this is not a new idea. This is one of my favorite images of the economic control room for the government of Chile in the late 60s, where you would literally have in these Star Trek chairs, old wise men sitting with all these indicators, with the precursor to the fax machine, looking at the amount of sugar being produced and how much oil, how much petroleum, corn, and that these people would push these little Star Trek buttons on the chairs and say, more sugar, less coal, more iron. And suffice it to say, the economy of Chile might be a little different if this room worked. And actually, we probably have all of these in our living rooms if it worked. Well, why didn't it work? Well, you're entrusting, 7 people with the economy of a country. And especially when you think that this little machine has more processing power than the US government had to send man to the moon, maybe the model isn't a few people in a few chairs, but everyone in their own chairs making small decisions that lead to big ideas. So how do we get that data to the people? Of course, governments have tried different models to do this with, success in various ways. But for us as a lab, can you move from that model of a platform for historic data, much like the open data initiatives that we have, but moving to a platform for real-time information as it's being produced? And as a milestone, we wanted to see if we could do this with a limited set of data, both public and private, and get it into the hands of people in a curated way. So we do something in our lab called the Urban Demo, where we want to present the work in progress to the public, open it up for scrutiny, open it up for conversation, but also at the same time make new friends who maybe they've never shared their data before. So getting everyone around the same table, or in this case, the same screen, and have a discussion about data. So we pulled together transportation data from Changi Airport in Singapore, ComfortDelGro, who's a mobility services company. They oversee the taxis and certain bus lines. The environmental agency from the government, the ports of Singapore, Singtel from Telco, telecommunications, and SP Services Utilities, mainly electricity. And within the Singapore Art Museum, we wanted to bring this data together and have people explore in a visual and intuitive way the magic and the life of Singapore around them. So can you see the city living and breathing around you in real time as it happens? So can you see where people are using anonymous cell phone data to draw a map of that city so you can see the financial district, the center city lighting up with people's activities? The relationship between energy consumption and ambient environment. Are we actually making the environment warmer because of our use of air conditioning, therefore creating a vicious cycle? What happens during special events? So the emotions of people, from sentiment data, but also mobile phone data, of how people get excited at the finish line that the Formula 1 race begins. Even something as simple as, can you find a taxi when it rains? So looking at weather data in real time, but also real-time availability and GPS of taxis. And using those same GPS probes to see where the traffic is, redrawing the map of Singapore based on time it takes to travel versus distance, growing as congestion gets worse. And then the role of Singapore in the world, the economic connectivity to the rest of the world through its airport, but then also its transshipment port as goods and services move through Singapore, destined for it and the rest of the world. But let's get back to that original premise. This was exciting when you're in a museum and, in a few ways exploring this data. But if we really wanted to go back to the idea of the internet of the city in a way, we can't ask everyone to, get this data, create their own visualizations or their own analyses every time if we really want to make it for everyone. Everyone in this room probably get really excited, but talk to your mother or your grandmother. they're probably not as able to do so. So for us, we want to turn this complicated process in doing any of these analyses or any of these visualizations and create a way for many people to use it. And we call this the Live Singapore Data Browser, where we want to take the data of the city, process it, reduce it, create a marketplace where private industry wants to participate, protect anonymity and privacy, a way to bring together public sector data and make it available to the citizens at large. Everyone from, app developers who can access it through, an API, but also for people, everyday people, to either interface with it through the web or maybe in their own urban environments. So we took a slice, the web application. Can we create a way where people can actually visualize this data quickly and easily versus having, a team of brilliant people working weeks on end? And this project we call the Data Browser, where actually you can bring together this real-time, quote-unquote, big data and visualize it very quickly. And you're actually seeing the process more or less in real time, but that you can upload your own data or access that real-time feed. Give it some semantic descriptions. Quickly and easily choose your options and then visualize it on your desktop. And actually see the flow of people, the movement of goods as it happens. And we're actually in beta testing, so if you're interested in actually testing this, we'd love to actually get your feedback as well, so certainly let me know. But going back to the idea of your grandmother, in Singapore and a lot of East Asian cultures, there's something called the auntie. She's usually the oldest woman in the household, and whatever auntie says goes. If she wants chicken rice for dinner, everyone is having chicken rice for dinner. But she's also not the most technologically savvy, so we actually want to create interfaces for her as well that's intuitive, that she can be at the bus stop and say, I want to get downtown. How do I get there? Right now, the systems we have, she can see that the next bus is coming in 3 minutes. For us, though, can we also give her information saying, that bus in 3 minutes is actually crowded, and it's likely to hit some rain, making your trip a little bit worse. Maybe you should actually wait another few minutes, take that next bus after, that's empty, make sure you get a seat so she can be more comfortable, and improve quality of service, the experience, versus just pure optimization, which is that smart city idea versus a sensible city. Speaking of mobility, we love working in that realm. And we recently got a great data set from the city of New York. We received 170 million trips, the data of that 170 million trips from 13,500 taxis over the span of 1 year. And we wanted to process it, especially when taxis are not the most efficient infrastructure. Because you have something like 3 o'clock, too many taxis, not enough people. Then you have 5 o'clock, too many people, not enough taxis. And then you have John F. Kennedy Airport, where you have somehow too many people and too many taxis, and nothing works. So for us, can you do better? And we wanted to both visualize it, but analyze the data. So purely on the visualizing side, you can already get some intuitions. You can see where pickups are. The yellows are pickups, blues are drop-offs. You can see where there are areas that are balanced. Manhattan, you can find a taxi really easily. But Brooklyn, Bronx, the Queens, you can't find it. So there's a lot of people who don't have access to this service. But we said, what if you change the paradigm? Can we maybe ask New Yorkers to rethink that infrastructure? Number one, what if you share their ride? What if you have someone else in your vehicle? And looking at the numbers, we found something interesting, and this was recently published. If New Yorkers are willing to share their ride with one additional party, but then also we're willing to extend their trip by no more than 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. Between those two things, you can reduce the number of rides in New York by 40%. Now, if New Yorkers were a little bit more patient and were willing to extend that to 5 minutes additionally, you can actually reduce the number of rides by 95% in the city of New York by sharing their infrastructure. And of course, that's a difficult case. We've received death threats from taxi drivers. They're not the nicest people sometimes. But that you can rethink models. But for us, it's also about, if you want to change that infrastructure, you have to inform people about the data. You have to inform them about these stories. So you can actually go online to hubcap.org and actually explore this data, actually down to the exact point where people were picked up from their GPS locations. And you can see what that sharing potential is. So between you can pick any two random points. Let's say you wanted to pick up a fairly typical ride, taking a taxi from Penn Station, the main train station, to, let's say, the CNN headquarters at Columbus Circle, the entry to Central Park. You can already see that there are, about 800,000 rides between those 2 points in a single year. But in that little green box, what happens if people shared? New Yorkers could save $3.5 million in fares. They could also save almost 1 million miles of travel. And then probably most importantly for the longevity of our society, they could save 400,000 kilograms of CO2. But of course, this is for a typical ride. What if you want to explore something more interesting, like the distance from one side of the block to the other? That you can actually see that there are about 45,000 trips between this corner and that corner being done by taxis. And if New Yorkers, for some reason, if they still want to take a taxi, shared, they could save about $77,000 in fares. And we think there's an economic model to this, especially when New York is replacing all of their taxis, spending billions of dollars to do so. If you think, what if we actually charged each person 75% of the fare? You each save 25%. That's pretty good. I'll share to save 25%. That taxi driver, on the other hand, just made an extra 50% in revenue without any additional cost. So when we talk about optimization, it doesn't have to be new. We could actually make it more intelligent in new ways. So of course, how do you match people and all of that? Well, that's something for industry, and we're working on that with a few partners, but it doesn't stop there. Because if you can combine 2 trips, as a lab, we also want to ask, what happens when you combine more trips? What happens if it's K trips? Well, we said you can actually design something new called, a taxi limousine. We were presenting this to the city of New York, and some man from the Public Transportation Agency said, yeah, we have the taxi limousine. It's called the Express Bus. So give us your data. Tell us how we can actually improve the bus system. Because chances are where people are taking taxis a lot, there's probably an issue with public transportation. So creating a feedback loop that not only analyzes the environment, but creating new opportunities moving forward. And we think data is really powerful in different ways, especially as we have more and more devices that talk back to us. Because it's amazing that this device or this monitor or the phone in your pocket, we know where everything comes from. We know where the atoms came from because we know the mine that the rare earth minerals came from. We know where the screen was made. We know all of that. But take that same device and throw it away, we have no idea. No one knows what happens to it. So we thought, if we want to talk about the Internet of Things and things talking back and producing space, why don't we look at the thing that people care the least about, the thing that you literally throw away? So we wanted to look at trash by actually tracking it. And with a little MIT medical experience, we wanted to tag trash and see where it goes. And what you're seeing is actually the waste processing facility for the city of New York. This is actually the most efficient way to recover recyclables with people and machines. So it's actually really interesting already, kind of on an infrastructure side, what it looks like when it's invisible. Otherwise invisible. So we wanted to tag trash. First, we developed those tags that I showed you at MIT. We later partnered with Qualcomm, who provided us with little tags that we could hack. They're basically like cell phones that can't make phone calls. The batteries last about 4 months, and they can report their locations. And we did this in the city of Seattle with a lot of volunteers. 500 volunteers brought 3,000 pieces of trash. We tagged them all. And we got everything and anything from toys, shoes, electronics. How we got a tag in a banana, I have no idea. I wasn't on that project, but yeah. MIT ingenuity right there. And we asked everyone to take their trash home and throw it away as if we were never there to see what happens to it. And initially, things that we expected. Things went to recycling facilities regionally. There's an incineration plant for power in the center city. A lot of it went there. But as time went on, the map kept growing. After a month, things were still traveling across the breadth of the country. And even after 2 months, things were still trying to find their final resting place. And the amazing thing is, no one had ever seen this map before. No one in industry, no one in government, certainly no one, when they were throwing things away, knew where things were going. And the map is actually pretty amazing because first, things didn't stay in the country. Under NAFTA, things could move between Mexico, the United States, and Canada freely. So some things ended up in Canada, some things ended up in Mexico. But that things traveled across the entire country. And for us, the amazing thing is that some things we know how to process. You throw away a piece of paper, and it stays pretty close. But all those new things, that cell phone, those LED light bulbs or the CFL light bulbs, those are the things that are traveling across the country. So when you throw away electronics, think again. But even more interestingly, 2 printer cartridges, both left Seattle, but took 2 very different routes. One traveled the northern way to Minneapolis, then Chicago, then back down to Baja California. The other one just took the short trip down the coast. The interesting thing is that the shorter trajectory went by truck, the longer one by train. The longer trajectory actually had a smaller carbon footprint. So even efficiencies that way, it's not just about distance, but also energy consumption. New findings that we could discover that no one had ever realized. Well, we shared this information with the people who volunteered, and we actually got an amazing story. Some people were really surprised where their stuff went. Some people were very green and had stuff just stay locally and was recycled. But one woman saw a plastic water bottle that she had purchased bottled water, and she saw that path stayed in Seattle, and it kept reporting for months. For some reason, it didn't get recycled. And she said, I swore off bottled water. I cannot look at my daughter and say that I left this piece of trash for her and her children and her children's children to deal with. So she swore it off. And we think that there's some power in that, seeing really what happens when our footprint is actually shown. It's not just us as a body, but also how much space we take up, especially when your waste is traveling to Florida, and we certainly know trash is going overseas. We actually did a follow-up to this looking at the electronics waste traveling overseas. It's pending litigation, so I can't comment on that, but the fact that I just said it's pending litigation, I can't comment. I think you can figure out what we found. So I want to show you 2 last projects in my remaining minutes that I think for us is really different in that it's a process that we call applying urban imagination. That sometimes a solution isn't just an analysis of something obvious. Sometimes you just have to be creative and come up with something new. And we wanted to look at what smart mobility was. And we worked with the city of Copenhagen. And in Copenhagen, mobility is this: bicycles. So we want to see, can we improve infrastructure, mobility in Copenhagen? Some of you have seen this already. And what resulted was the Copenhagen wheel. That is actually like a hybrid engine for your bicycle. Using a series of motors, actually captures energy when you're braking or going downhill and gives it back to you when you need an extra boost. The interesting thing is that it actually has a series of sensors inside that not only can give you your performance information. We all wear these bands now, or your phone has an app that's tracking all this stuff. But at the same time, can we not just collect information about you so that you can improve your ride, but maybe you can actually share some of that information. So we're actually collecting information for the urban environment, collecting air quality measurements, collecting traffic, so that we can actually feed this back to you, but also to the city. So that not only are we getting an air quality reading from that big expensive machine that the city bought that cost $10,000 sitting on a corner, we can actually see the air quality between that side of the stage and this side of the stage because the bicycles are moving down. So while we may not have precision, we have a higher end, which gives a great picture. And then, of course, for planners, this information is important. You can actually draw a picture of congestion of bicycles in real time, as well as the air quality. And for us, the exciting thing is that if you're asthmatic like me, I can't ride through an area with high pollution. I'll have bad health impacts. So I can actually see where the air quality is poor and have the GPS that's connected to the phone reroute me around the areas of pollution. So that's actually a new way of doing it. Well, we're excited because this is actually hitting market next quarter.
5 minutes, 5 minutes.
This
please.
is the Copenhagen Wheel. It turns your ordinary bicycle into a smart electric hybrid by simply replacing your back wheel. Connect it to your smartphone, download the app, and you're ready to go. Bicycles are a great way to move around, yet sometimes distances are too long, hills can get in the way, and hard journeys to work may leave you covered in sweat. The Copenhagen Wheel is here to change all of that. The technology was developed over several years at MIT, together with the city of Copenhagen, one of the world's most innovative places for cycling. Its original inventors licensed the technology and founded Super Pedestrian, the startup where we are now working around the clock to bring the wheel to you. Like the best riding companion, the Copenhagen Wheel learns how you pedal and integrates seamlessly with your motion. It captures your energy when you brake or go downhill, and gives you a push when you need it, with 3 to 10 times your regular foot power. It's easy. Ride it just like a normal bike. As you pedal, the motor automatically kicks in with no additional throttles or buttons. All technology for the Copenhagen Wheel is contained within the red casing, including motor, removable batteries, wireless connectivity, smart locking, multiple sensors, and an embedded control system. Use your smartphone to customize your ride, monitor your physical activity, gather information from your environment to share with your friends and fellow cyclists. And if you're a software developer, you can even create your own biking apps. So whether you carry yourself, your kids, or your gear, hills seem flat, distances shrink, and you can cycle just about anywhere. So transform your bike and transform the city. The Copenhagen Wheel.
I will say the video has one issue. People should wear bike helmets when you're bicycling. So please do that. Don't learn from the last. Always wear, even with the Copenhagen Wheel, always wear a bike helmet. But I want to show you one last project, something that we're working on now. Because a lot of people are talking about UAVs. I think you might have some fun later as well. But that, right now it's the province of the military for the most part, doing terrible things with this technology. But we think there's a lot of space for civic technology. A lot of places in the center of Canada, as well as the United States, are using it for agriculture. Amazon and Google want to deliver your goods to your home. Of course, people are strapping cameras to it. And then my favorite is the sushi copter. The best use of technology is to get my sushi to me faster, evidently. But for us, how do you bring back that unmanned aspect, but also give it some autonomy, some intelligence to actually maneuver? And for the military, when they send their planes, they send it high up, 33,000 feet. There are no buildings to deal with. But what happens when you actually use it in a city? What happens when average people, can you leverage this technology for the average person? Create technologies that allows us to intelligently and by itself move through urban spaces when you have to deal with things like trees and buildings and all of that. So we wanted to actually develop an urban drone, as it were. And I'll show you kind of one of our initial tests for that. Because we wanted to see if we could navigate an urban space, a complex space. We wanted to look at the most complex one that we could find, our own campus. And at the same time, make fun of our friends at Harvard.
Welcome to MIT. Where would you like to go? Follow me, please.
I will say it can't actually take a picture of you. That's a lie. Camera's too heavy.
The Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab is the largest research lab at MIT.
To your right, the Media Lab. To your left, the Data Center.
Follow me, please.
And it takes you, of course, the most direct route the way you want to go.
Approaching your destination.
You have arrived. Welcome to Sensible City Lab.
Goodbye.
Well, you know, one of the problems doing it indoors is, One of the problems of doing it indoors is that little things are actually big problems, like a door. Not that we can't sense where the door is and tell it to stop, but then how do you know? Do you open the door? Or does the drone open the door somehow? And if the door is open, who goes in first? Do I go in first, then the drone follows me, and then tries to speed up to be my guide, or does it go first? And these are actually very difficult challenges. In a way, the indoor locationing is the easiest part. Well, so for us, where we're taking it now is we're moving it outside to the urban space to actually measure environmental quality with great precision. So right now, how we do it is that we send a man in a kayak into the Charles River, and that even if it's in the winter, he goes out, tests the water quality. Well, can we give him the power to actually send a fleet of little HIMs, these little drones that he can actually allocate tasks to, they figure out how to do. And we're working with the Museum of Science, Environment Protection Agency to do this, so that actually soon it'll be a whole educational experience where kids can actually see these drones going out, collecting spatial data, so they're analyzing the environment, but also the environmental quality, sending it back to both us in the lab to do science, the Museum of Science, so that they can have programs around that, and of course the Environmental Protection Agency getting data from that. We did find one hurdle, and it's called the Federal Aviation Authority. Unfortunately, we've gone through 7 rounds of paperwork, so we actually might be, for the Canadians, we might be demoing it here in Canada, so you might be seeing it flying in Toronto. The NavCan is a little bit nicer than the FAA. So, you know, with that, thank you very much on behalf of our team of nerds and scientists. Thank you for having us here, and we look forward to the conversation later today.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.